Hey all, this is TCGM. First off, sorry that this is 3 days late. Real life decided to get in the way. Oh well, the tutorial is here now. So, I screwed up. My previous tutorial is shit. Ignore it. My fault. Anyways, I've redone the entire system, so we're going to have to start from scratch. Also, you can no longer use the default version of Faucet Networking due to the fact that GameMaker Studio has built-in networking functions, which are still crap, by the way, which overwrite the Faucet functions. So, we're going to get set up. Let's get started. First, we need to make 3 objects. Object player, net manager, and menu manager. Save. We also need to make 8 scripts. They are in sequence. Wow, I really hate the location of this. There we go. Create client init. Oh, good. It's in a good spot. Server init. Server end step. Server begin step. I'm sorry guys, I'm a little tired because I've already recorded this twice. It's being annoying. It kept screwing up the audio. Client begin step. Player init. Player step, and finally player draw. Okay, now that we've done that, we need to set up some constants. Blah 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 blah. Since I've already done this before, they're here. These, do these. There's some new ones here from the last tutorial. If you watched it, just keep them in mind. Alright. So, let's fill in the scripts now, shall we? I have put these scripts up on Pastebin so that you do not have to try to copy them from a Google Doc, or fate forbid, from the video itself. The links are in my script, as well as in the description of this video below wherever the description is. I don't know YouTube's layout currently. I'm opening up all these scripts in my web browser so that I can go navigate to them. Alright. So client init. Done. Server init. Server end step. Server begin step. Client begin step. And then player init. Player step. And player draw. Alright. Now that we've copied all our scripts into the project, it's time to instruct our objects to do what we want. First, we're going to open up Menu Manager and add a create event. This is the code we're going to put in there. It's identical to what was in the last tutorial. Just like the previous system, the server IP and server port variables hold what we will be connecting to. Add event step, and then put this code in. You can copy this off the screen if you like. I didn't feel like putting this on Pastebin because it's not that much code. It's also in the Google Doc, and it does copy correctly. So we put that there, and that, and I will not answer your phone right now, thank you. Okay. No, I don't want to know, shut up. Alright, so now that we've done what Menu Manager needs, we need to go to the net manager and add a create event. We are going to put this code inside. There we go. And then add a begin step event. Make sure you add a begin step, not a step. It has to be begin step. Put this code in, and then a end step. Fetch that code. Okay. Finally, we need to tell the player object to run its scripts. So add the corresponding events and use the script block to run the scripts directly. So we're going to add step, create, and draw, and use this block over here to run the scripts. You should do this at all times, because instead of having to go inside of the object and then going to the event and then double-clicking on this, you can just go to the scripts and double-click on whatever script it is. So that drastically lowers your development time. It also helps you to keep your code neat and organized. I'm not going to answer the phone. 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 Thank you. Okay. So now we need to make a stupid triangle sprite thing to represent the player. Let's make a 64 image and draw a triangle in it. Okay, we're done. Let's put it in the center, and that's its origin. Name it sprite player. Set the player object to use the sprite. The right of the image, 0 degrees, is where the forward direction is. Okay, so the setup is now finished. You're done setting the project up. If you'd like to just finish this thing, skip to the time displayed on the screen now. If you'd like an explanation of everything, stay here. I'm glad you decided to stay. Right, so, as I explained earlier, I've rewritten a lot of the code this engine runs off of to make it more streamlined, so I, and thus you, can understand it. First, let's talk about the new variables. Client X, Client Y, and Client Angle are all used to temporarily store data retrieved from an incoming message. Client Handle is new, though. It replaces the screwed-up MID/CID system from my previous tutorial. Client Handle is used nowhere except to temporarily hold a multiplayer ID. It's used for nothing else. Message Type simply temporarily holds the type of message that we are receiving. Expected bytes and next byte is header you need not worry about. They are integral to the functioning of the networking system. Don't mess with them. Object handle is used in only one way, like client handle, but it is used to hold object IDs, i.e., whenever we create a new player object, we assign it to object handle, so we may then set variables inside the new object. Client ID is a global variable on both the client and server, but it is used very differently depending upon which side is using it. On the client side, its only purpose is to hold the multiplayer ID, which the server sends the client upon joining the server. However, on the server side, it is accompanied by a global variable called Client ID Max, and is used to temporarily store the randomly generated multiplayer ID, which we will cover later. Joined is simply there to avoid running any damaging code which could cause a crash until the client has joined the server. The rest of the variables before local player are all internal systems. If you feel like messing with them, please read the comments I have left. Local player is a variable used on both server and client, and is used like object handle. It only stores a singular object at all times, which is the one-player object with its mode set to local. Let's open up the server init script now, as there is something else the server does which the client does not do. You'll notice we create a DS list in the server. This holds all the multiplayer IDs which have been used up. It is there to make sure we do not assign a new client an MID which is already in use. The chances of that are slim, as the maximum is 65,536, but it's still a good safeguard to have. On the server side, we add 0, the default server MID, to the client list. This reserves it for the server, and every client who joins the server will be able to tell who the server is because of the player's render code. There is another variable you must be aware of. Player CID. Player CID. It is used to store the MID of a player object on the object, and is accessed many times throughout the network code. Now that the variables are finished, let's go look at the end step event for the server. I will only be explaining the new portions of the system. For the explanations of everything else, either read the comments in the code or watch the previous tutorial. So, let's look at the system which randomly generates and checks for multiplayer IDs. This begins here. We first create a temporary variable with a simple boolean. It will indicate to this do until loop whether the loop can terminate or not. This is the loop. Right, so inside this loop, we create a temporary I variable and set it to 0. We then iterate through the entire client list using a for loop. The first step in this iteration is to generate a random number which is less than the maximum ID number there can be, 65,536. This limit exists due to the fact that a short can only send that large of a number at once. I highly doubt you will be able to max this out. Ever. We then try to find this number we have generated inside the client list. If it is not found, meaning the function returns -1, we can end the do until loop by setting can stop to true. If it is found, the loop will run again. I've only ever had this run twice on me, and there is no performance hit. Now that we have our new multiplayer ID, add it to the client list. Then set the new client's player CID to the multiplayer ID we have generated. We also send the incoming client its new multiplayer ID. There is a second section I have added. How on earth would we tell any new clients which join how many players there are and what their multiplayer IDs are? That is where this section comes in. You see, GameMaker has a handy ability to serialize its data structures. Serialization means turning any amount of data into a hashed string for easy transport. Serialization procedures tend to be different from language to language, so GM serialization wouldn't work with C++'s. We serialize the client list into a temporary variable. We then get the string length of this new string, as Faucet Networking has no way to tell how many bytes a string is. We now compose a message to the newly connected client telling it that this is a client list message type. We add the bytes the message would normally have, 4 bytes, 2 shorts, to the string length, as the message will contain these extra bytes as well. We then send the length of the string so that the client knows how many bytes to grab, and then we send the serialized string. There is also a simple disconnection system in place. It merely tests for a socket error, and if it finds one, sends a client disconnect message to all the clients with the disconnected client's multiplayer ID. It then searches for and removes its multiplayer ID from the client list, and then destroys the player object. The client side merely does the same. Now let's take a look at the client begin step procedures. As I said in the last section, I will only be covering the new systems. A lot of the work of this multiplayer ID system is done on the client side when a client is first joining. We're basically doing the reverse of what the server did here. We get the string length from this message, grab the string from the message, then parse it into a DS list. All of this is temporary to free up memory. The important part is that the client runs through the entire temporary client list, checking to make sure it's not accessing its own multiplayer ID, then creating a player object with the multiplayer ID in the list slot. After it's done, it destroys the list. The last thing we need to do is to create 2 rooms. We name one Room Menu, and the other, if it would unfreeze, yeah, okay, the other Room Main. Place the Menu Manager object into Room Menu, and the Net Manager object in Room Main. I'm going to set the background color of both rooms to black, because reasons. Yep. Now we're going to create an executable for this project. Save it wherever. I'm saving it to my desktop. Okay, looks like it's done. Something weird is going on with my mouse. Okay, there we go. We need to launch 3 copies of this application. One to host, one to be the client, and another to be proof that this system can handle multiple players. When running it for the first time, Windows will likely ask you to let it through the firewall. Accept this. There you have it. Server client multiplayer code, right from the comfort of your living room, or your bedroom, wherever you're watching this video right now. Hell, you may be on a jet over Nevada. Thank you for watching my second GameMaker tutorial. The link to the finished GMK file for this project is in the description, along with links to GameMaker, Faucet Networking, my script for this tutorial, and the modified Faucet Networking extension I have used. Have a pleasant day. Whee!